What's going on, everyone? How are you doing? I hope good. This is Dublin. Come eat and drink with me. So today's episode is a little more casual. You can see, no suit and sport jacket and like that. So we'll just kind of keep it relaxed because of the subject matter and content that we're gonna play with today. Now, before I get into what we're pairing with, I wanted to introduce the wines, and then I'll tell you why I chose these as to what dish we're going to pair with today. So these are two Ridge Zinfandels. And if you're not familiar with Ridge, these winemakers are absolute Zin legends in the Sonoma area, Dry Creek, and just all through Sonoma. They have a bunch of vineyards everywhere. They've been making first-class wines since the 60s. Yeah, that's right. You heard me right. The 60s. We're talking like, the beginning of the boom of Napa wines coming back onto the scene. Everyone tried through the 40s and kind of limped their way through, but they didn't really get it right until around the 60s and in the 70s when they started winning some actual wine competitions. And Ridge was right there with them. You probably know it as the Montebello. That was a really famous vineyard that they had, and the Cabernet Sauvignon ages forever. Beautiful wine, awesome, and their Zins are just as good. Now these, what I really love about these is they're not just your typical kind of, and I'm not gonna sit there and throw shade at Zin. They're not all one-dimensional. But I'm gonna say, for me, I don't always gravitate towards them because they are sometimes a little one-dimensional, kind of that cherry cough syrupiness type of thing. But when you get into good single vineyard Zinfandels, and you get into really good winemakers, really great terroir, and old vines. Old vines just mean a lot to Zin because those roots are going way down into the minerals and getting that complexity up into the grapes, and they're not just one-dimensional, and neither are these. And these are both single vineyard. They both come from 100-year plus old vines, which is crazy to think that there's vines that are 100 years old and they're still producing fruit. Just bonkers. But the results are freaking awesome. So that's what we're gonna play with here today. And I chose two different ones out of the pure fact of what we're pairing it with. And they're from two kind of different regions of Sonoma. The Lytton Springs. This guy is the traditional, kind of like, not traditional, but well-known Zinfandel area, the Dry Creek area, which is up by Healdsburg, northern Sonoma, kind of on your way to Alexander Valley. Awesome Zins come out of there. Very traditional, nice kind of like dusty soils, and you get that chocolatiness with some really nice dark fruits. And then I also wanted to try something a little bit further down south, which gets a little more cooler climate with, the clouds and the fog kind of rolling in, from the Russian River Valley. This is kind of down by Petaluma, the Sonoma area. That's south of Santa Rosa. You're definitely going to get a little more effect. Some of that coastal effect with the fog rolling in. It's going to cool down the grapes. Kind of change it up a little bit, kind of like think of Rhone, where you have Shine Off the Pop, and then, Hermitage, Côte Rôtie, just how all those areas in the terroir and the climate, microclimates changes, what happens to the vineyards and what happens, to the grapes and the flavor profiles. So that's what we want to play with today. Try these out. We'll talk about these wines, and then we'll get into Dublin. What are we eating? What are we pairing with this today? Why are you casual? What's going on? Chili. Yeah, you heard me right, chili. And what's the first thing you think of with chili? And it's the same thing I'm thinking of. It's not wine, it's beer. You pair chili with beer. You get a nice, a lager or something, or, a Pilsner or whatever. A nice light, fair beer that pairs perfectly with chili. Well, not everyone likes beer, which I don't know why, because I love beer. That was my first love, even before wine. I used to make beer. And some people just can't drink it. They're just not in the mood for it. Sometimes I'm not in the mood for a beer. And I want to I want to try to conquer this pairing. Chili is not an easy pairing. What do you pair with chili? Sometimes there's a little spice to it. It has like these like Southwest, kind of flavors. You don't really sit there and think of wine. But if you get the pairing right, maybe you have something kind of amazing. Maybe these go really well with it. So I did my research, and yes, you can do Rhones. Yeah, you can do Malbecs, and even some people said Beaujolais, which, we'll see about that one. Not so sure. You could do like a white wine, sometimes with spicy foods. You want the Rieslings, things of that nature. But Zinfandel, Syrah, Petit Syrah, all those things go really well with spicy, kind of red meats. And this specific chili that I'm making does have a lot of red meat in it. It is, does have a lot of ribeye, and then it also has some pork into it. It's probably about like a 70, 30 type of percentile breakdown. Kind of like these wines. We'll get into these in the Zin breakdown. One of them has 70%, the other one's 90%. That's kind of interesting too. So, take a breath here. We're gonna do some chili. We're gonna try these wines out, and we're gonna see if the chili just absolutely just bulldozes these wines with the strong flavors that chili has, or are these things gonna just really bring out some interesting flavors with the chili, and vice versa? Is the chili gonna bring out some interesting flavors with the wines? So we'll see. First, we're gonna try these out. We'll talk about these a little bit, and then we'll do the pairing like always. So hang with me and let's try these out. All right, we're back. Let's get into some wine, and then let's try out this amazing chili. Really excited about this. A lot of different spices, a lot of different flavors going on. Can I handle these wines? We will see. First and foremost, let's start out with the Lytton Springs. This is, like I said, a dry creek, single vineyard, Zinfandel. This one has a little over 70% Zin, and then the rest is filled up with mainly like 15% Petit Syrah, and then a couple other smaller blending grapes. Then we'll get into the Pagani, which like I was saying before, a little bit further south, down, it has a little more of that fog affected region and weather. This one has a 90% Zinfandel, and the rest, like about 8 to 9% Petit Syrah, and then a couple other little blending grapes. So let's start out with the Lytton Springs. They're both 100-year-old vines, but Lytton has been around longer. They've been making wine out of Lytton Springs a lot longer. We're talking, 70s, maybe even like late 60s. Pagani was something more in the 90s, where they made a deal with the Pagani family, and we're buying grapes from them. Amazing family that grows, beautiful Zins and all sorts of different other varietals, like Petit Syrah and whatnot. Just awesome stuff. So let's get into this guy, Lytton Springs. They're both 2021, so relatively young, very young. These wines can age for a very long time, but also are wonderful young as well if you don't have the patience or the time or, cellar room. Very nice nose. Right away, you get some of that fruit, a little bit of that dusty cocoa-iness, some of that, just that dust terroir coming through, which is kind of really interesting out of that dry creek area. Very nice. Wow. Just beautiful. When I talk about complexity, that thing right off the bat, you get that fruit mid-palate right away. You're getting some really nice kind of like blackberry and some plum coming through. A little bit of pepperiness on the finish with a little bit of that cocoa powder, cocoa-iness chocolate that comes through. It's not that dry of a cocoa though. It definitely is, kind of a luscious chocolate that is on that palate and that finish. Good backbone. It's not overly tannic, but it has that nice backbone to where it's really holding all those flavors together. It's not that fruit bomminess that's just smacking in the mouth. Really complex, really interesting. They use the word like sophisticated, but I mean, it is complex. There is a lot going on. It's not one-dimensional at all. That's a really good wine. Let's try this Pagani out. Kind of interesting to see what, a little bit cooler climate brings to this. Getting some blueberry in the nose, not as much as that chocolate or, you know, that dustiness coming through yet. Oh yeah, you can tell it has a higher percentage of zin. Definitely more of those red fruits coming through, which does make sense because that higher percentage of zin, you're gonna get a little more of those red fruits, that raspberry, a little bit of that cherry. But on that finish though, there's a nice little bit of like kind of like a baked blueberry note coming through. Whew, that's really good, really interesting. Definitely different than the Lytton. It doesn't have as much of that dusty kind of mineral terroirness that was in the finish, that chocolatiness. I'm not saying it doesn't have any chocolate, but it does have, you know, just a touch. Definitely not as much. I was expecting, so these two are different in their own ways, but at the same time, you can tell it has that beautiful Zinfandel fruit coming through. I can tell that the Lytton does have a little bit more of that petite sirah, so you are getting those darker fruits on the finish, kind of that blackberry and that plumminess, not as much of that raspberry that's coming through with the Pagani. Really both fantastic, beautiful wines. And these are all both very approachable. I don't know the exact market value, but they're usually between 40 to 50 bucks, right around there. And the quality you're getting, I'm telling you, like, these crush some of those Napa cabs out there as far as just quality wise that are charging 70, 80, you know, bucks, whatever. These are great wines. So don't look down your nose at Zinfandel, because you can find some good producers that know what they're doing, and it is fantastic. But hey, let's see what Zin does with this chili. I know, chili? We don't want it to make it easy. Anyone can pair a steak, you know, but have they tried to pair wine with chili? Are there Shams out there going, what on my wine list goes with chili? No, they're not. But I am, because, you know, maybe we're a little bit crazy that way. But we like the challenge. We like the challenge. Oh yeah, well that chili definitely has some pop to it. There is that chili spice component coming through, but that poblano, that the ancho chili, which is a semi-ripe poblano that's dried out, what that does is bring a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of like the chocolatiness to it. Wow, that's really bringing everything together. That's a really good chili, really digging it. Kind of interesting to see if these can hand up to it. Let's try the Lytton first. Totally, absolutely. Wow. Especially with this chili, because of that, the ancho chili, that poblano. It really has a nice chocolatiness. It's actually really kind of interesting, paired well with, like I was saying, remember the finish has that chocolatey kind of cocoa powdery and mineral aspect on the finish. Totally going well with this chili, absolutely. Yeah, that totally works. Here we go. Let's try the Pagani. I can't imagine this is going to be like worlds different, but it should be interesting to see, you know what, something with a little less of that minerality and cocoa does with this. Okay. Okay. It definitely works, but I think with how fruit forward it is and without as much of some of that minerality and that chocolatiness, I wouldn't say that it hits just as good as that Lytton Spring. I'm gonna say I'm wrong on this one as far as my prejudgment. I was gonna go with the Pagani because I thought that some of the more those red fruits and stuff would kind of go with that chili. You know what I mean? Like red fruits, red chilies, and whatnot. Nope. You actually need some of that chocolatiness to go with these chilies bring. And you need some of that dusty mineral kind of finish, whatever, to handle some of that little bit of spices, you know, that you get in this chili. So, wow, really interesting, actually. But you could totally do both. You're gonna enjoy them both. I'd say Zin is an absolute win when it comes to a chili pairing. So the next time you go to your chili cook-off, what are you gonna bring? Dublin said bring Lytton Springs. So why don't you go get yourself a bottle of Lytton Springs? Go to that chili cook-off. People will give you some funny looks, for sure, but we're kind of used to that, right? Because that's where we live. We're living up here somewhere where everyone's kind of looking up at us. We're drinking crazy wines. We're pairing different things, and we're enjoying life. We're embracing it. We're taking a bite of that apple or a spoonful of that chili. Heck yeah. We're gonna sit by the fire here. We're gonna finish this, enjoy it. I'm gonna play around with these a little bit more. See if anything happens when they open up for, another hour or so. If it does, I'll report back, but otherwise, I'm gonna say that Lytton Springs really crushes it. That's actually like an amazing pairing. Like I'm gonna go to some sort of restaurant and pitch this idea, see if I can get a percentage of the profits, because people are gonna be running to this place with this pairing. No, of course they're not, but they should be, and you should be as well. Because you know why? Because you deserve it. Go out and have some fun. Do something fun like this. Why the heck not? That's what wine is about. That's what life is about. Having a little fun, trying something new. So if you haven't had any of these Ridges, I highly recommend both. Try them both out. They're both freaking awesome. I think you're gonna love them. And if you're making some chili, yeah, maybe one night have some beer with it. And then the next night, open some Zinfandel. Cheers, everyone. Cheers.